Shipping time, makes my old heart sing. Shipping time, and I feel just like a king.
Woo! Hello and welcome back to Old Faithful. I'm your host, Matt Trask. My thanks to Perfect Wave Productions, making me look good today. My thanks to Jay and Steve down here behind the camera and on the soundboard. Please support my friends at Black Hills Blend Espresso. 4 locations here in Rapid City. They might not make you happy, but they'll make you caffeinated. That's about all the preamble. Oh, please like and subscribe. And if you can find it in your heart, share this video with your friends. If you enjoy one-eyed cowboys who think they're funny, or guitars or stories, I'm so excited to have my good friend, Robert Dennis.
Good friend.
Good friend.
Mentor.
That's
Idol.
what we're going with here on camera.
There you go.
Camera's rolling.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to be your neighbor.
Yes. Well, you're still kind of my neighbor for Western South Dakota.
In the biblical sense, I'm your neighbor.
Well, you know, you're close enough.
Close enough. Still in Western South
I
Dakota.
go 200 and some miles to help a neighbor brand, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's country life right there. Sure.
By the way, when you were doing your little things here, it would be nice that the people here where you're doing your filming, you might mention where they're located in case somebody would like to come down and do some business here with.
Constructive criticism. I like it.
Yeah.
That is a very good idea.
Well, I didn't know how to get here. You had to tell me.
I did have to tell you, and I may need some help. I do know that Perfect Wave Productions is located on East St. Pat. Can somebody give me 1215 East St. Pat?
South side. Just come down the hill from Robbinsdale.
Right. If you're of the honky tonk set, you will. Yeah, you need relative directions. It is, in fact, east of the Robbinsdale Lounge.
Yes.
On East St. Patrick.
On the south side of the highway.
On the south side of the street.
Yeah.
Exactly. Robert, that is a brilliant idea. Thank you.
Well,
and that's why I asked him on the show, and hopefully why he's making
probably the only good
bucks.
idea I'll have all day.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about you with emphasis on your musical journey?
Okay, my name is Robert Dennis. I ranch out at Red Isle, South Dakota. The musical thing, my folks had a dance band, and I'm talking piano, drum, and a saxophone. Nobody sang. That was the music that we grew up on at all those country dances years ago, the old big band type stuff. With the Flying Dutchman, who most kids have no idea how much fun they're missing by not getting to dance to the Flying Dutchman. And so I grew up around a musical family, and my mom played the piano and my dad played the drums. And Dad was one of them kind of guys that could pick up any instrument and just come up with a little tune. Very good ear. Chance is much like that. My son.
Who has been on the show.
Yes, he has been on the show. It was a good show. And so I have grown up with music and singing and at church and stuff. And probably when I was I'm 63, just had my 63rd birthday the other day. Thank you. And I went to some neighbors at one time, and both of them had guitars when I was about 21, 22. Now, my sister had a guitar. My mother tried to teach me piano, and I was too stubborn to let her. My sister tried to show me a little guitar, but of course she had the first guitar she had wasn't a very easy playing guitar, so it hurt your fingers. She did eventually buy a really nice Fender, but it just wasn't something that I wanted to do. I was satisfied just to sing, and when I was out putting up hay as a child, you know, I could sing all the old Johnny Cash songs and amuse myself and scare all the livestock away. And anyway, I went to I don't even remember what kind of a function it was, but these two brothers were playing guitar, and I was fascinated, and they played really cool songs, and I was talking to them afterwards, and they said, you know, most of these country songs, 3 chords. That's all it takes.
Right.
And it piqued my interest, and I went and bought a fairly reasonably priced Sigma guitar from Schneider's Music that used to be down here on West Main or St. Joe, or excuse me, Main Street or St. Joe. And I started learning, and I know that my wife got really sick and tired of What Shall We Do with the Drunken Sailor, because that was my first song. And I was amazed years later to find out that there was more than 3 chords. Would improve on the song a lot.
Yeah.
But I have of the opinion that there is no such thing as a good song that doesn't have some minor chords in it. And I know most musicians scream when you say that, especially organists and pianists. But I love the sound of minor chords. And I'm very much in love with ballads.
Sure.
My biggest complaint on music today is I would call it overproduced. The sound level of the guitars, the banjo, whatever, is way too high for the voice. I want to hear the voice, and I want to hear the words. And there is a couple young guys, a kind of a group around this area that's gotten very popular, and I love their music. But the singer gets up there and he goes, I want to hear the words he's saying. And there is a style out there today. And a lot of the old rock songs that I hated as a child and then had to learn to like in high school. And then when I married my wife, she introduced me to Bob Seger. And I like all kinds of music if it's good. And rap is not music. You can't dance to it. If you can't dance to it, is it music?
I don't know what to say right now.
That's something if you can stump Matt Trask. Anyway, so I picked this guitar up and I started learning, and we'd have jam sessions, local guys, and pick up a little things, and I was always into poetry too from a young age, and I started doing some cowboy poetry shows, and what I noticed, they usually had, like for the headliners, there would be a poet, a cowboy poet, and a singer.
Sure.
And it dawned on me, my money brain working, because I'm always broke, rancher, starving to death, nonprofit organization.
Sure.
That if I could play a song and do poetry, I could get gigs and maybe, get hired a little more often or something.
Yet another brilliant idea from Robert Dennis. Sure.
I don't know. I don't know. It was brilliant because it didn't work out that good. But it got doing. Well, then the lady at church asked me to start playing with her in the choir loft.
Okay.
And I very hesitatingly did. But I have heard this numerous times. Very well-known entertainers that they learn so much that carried them forward by singing at church as a child.
Absolutely.
And what I notice is the stuff that you play at church is not simple 3 chords usually.
It is not.
And so I would have to really work and struggle to learn those songs that I could play along with the pianist or the organist at church. And in time, I went through 2 different ladies that were doing it. When they left, guess who got to be the new musician and the head cheese at the church? I am the choir now and the congregation.
Hey, good for you.
Once in a while, I'll get chance convinced to come up and play with me. And I've got grandkids that are playing now. And hopefully we've at the little Catholic church there at Red Owl. My family has been the music there since its inception in 1919. My grandmother and then my mother. And there was kind of a little dry spot in there where I was not part of it, but then went on. So
I've got a lot of questions. First of all, we're both Catholic, and how that's relative here is that particularly the Catholic Church musical canon, and I'm only half joking when I say it was written by Jesuits who hate guitarists.
I think so.
Yeah, yes. And most of it's in B flat.
I happen to be related to a Catholic priest who adamantly states that, the only proper equipment to be playing it on is a piano or an organ.
There is a large sect who would argue that.
Except Silent Night was written expressly for the guitar because the organ was broken.
Broken. There are those songs born of necessity. Yes. But in the Catholic Church, right or wrong, there are many people who say guitar does not belong.
Well, maybe you're too happy or something. Not solemn.
Something. To your point about minor chords, I agree, and that's a valid point. I would say there are still minor chords in modern recordings, but they're just used as passing chords. They don't hang on, and they don't use them as part of the melody.
Right.
And then let's go back to this early band, drums, saxophone, and piano.
Yes.
So this was entirely 100% acoustic.
Oh, absolutely. There was no electronics. I'm talking probably mid-30s.
Okay. Did they have like a microphone and a small primitive PA system? It was just...
No, it's it's like the banjo.
Sure.
Although I heard a great quote the other day about a banjo. I had made a comment on Facebook about I really like banjo music if it's not real loud.
Right.
And I've been listening to a lot of bluegrass, and they seem to think that the banjo should take the front on every song.
Right.
And I do like banjo music, but it's overdone so much of the time. Now, Kim Bachman was out, that you've had her on here, and she had her banjo last night, and we jammed. Did a lovely job.
Right.
But I made that comment on Facebook, and she said a little retort to me, tongue-in-cheek, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. But there was someone, and in those bands at that time, there were like 3 different family bands in that area. So when you went to do a dance, at some point, one musician would trade with someone else.
Sure.
Someone else would come up and play for mom on the piano so she could go dance. Somebody would drum for dad. Somebody else would get up. I don't think Uncle Harry would give him the saxophone, but they would play something. Buster Jones played the banjo something. But in a time when you needed loudness to project, a banjo was excellent.
Right.
And most people don't realize, you see the old Westerns and the cowboy with his guitar. No, they were more apt to have a fiddle, a mandolin, or a banjo.
Right, exactly. And a banjo was the staple rhythm instrument of the Dixieland jazz style, and this sounds much like that. And the loudness of the banjo influenced the guitarist, too. It's why we have all this electric guitar. We were trying to be heard above the banjo.
So answer me this. I am not very crazy to listen to a slide steel guitar.
Okay.
But I love a dobro.
All right.
And all a dobro was when they put that tin plate on there to keep up with the banjo.
Yeah. Yes, it was. They put a resonator cone.
Yeah.
It was to amplify the volume. Also, you're wrong about slide guitar, but we will let that go.
Oh, yeah, they aren't the same.
No, that you don't like it. I'm hacking on you. Sorry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not that No, I don't like it, man.
So
it's overdone.
Your grandpa's band.
My dad.
Your
My
dad's
dad.
band, excuse me. All of those guys, and you mentioned there were 3 bands in the area.
Yes.
They would have become masters of milking every available decibel from an acoustic instrument and setting up in the right spot?
No, not really, because those community halls, they got smart early on, and they built a little stage, much like Elm Springs.
Right.
And they were set up to project out somewhat, and then they elevated the bandstand and up, to get that music. And, of course, when they played the piano, depending. And like my dad, it was always interesting to watch him. Because they would take a wee nip off the jug that they were kept outside, And they would take a little break every hour or so and go outside and have a little nip off the bottle. And it was a community. And, and I never very seldom ever saw anybody get bad shape from it.
Right.
But it was just a friendly.
A good time.
Yeah. And you could always tell if Dad had been nipping at the bottle because the drumming got louder and louder and louder and faster. And some of the ladies, they were less apt to. But it was funny because, like Mom, she played everything by sheet music.
Okay.
But there were a couple other ladies out there that could play by ear.
Right.
There's 2. Well, one of them is still alive, and we got her up at a jam session in the last year, and we loved it. You could name any song. Didn't matter.
Right.
And I think I can play that, and she would play it. Kay King.
Right.
Okay.
The fabulous Kay
But
King.
anyway, it was funny, the different styles.
Right. Sure.
But there was almost a set list for each group. I mean, Darktown Stutters Ball was always played, Tennessee Waltz, and at the end of the night, when you knew the dance was over, Good Night, Irene.
Good Night,
Irene was the final song.
So the crowd had to, apparently, and I bet the crowd learned fast, that if they wanted to be part of the music and the dancing, to stand here. And quite obviously, at most of those, it was kind of an unwritten rule. Alcohol was outside.
Yes.
So you went outside. Was there a spot in the building where you could kind of remove yourself from the dance?
What I remember is with the front door, like at Red Owl, that was right where the band was.
Okay.
And that's where they congregated. And then the women would sit on the aisles in between dances.
Okay.
But there was never an empty dance.
Okay.
I mean, you danced with your wife, you danced with your neighbor. Little kids. I learned to dance when I was 7 years old, and the big deal, we would go get the older ladies.
Right.
And they would smile and dance with us.
Right.
And at our foibles and foolish attempts at dancing.
Did the sound carry through the whole building?
Yes.
It did. Okay.
Because you had a loud drum and you had the old stand-up piano,
right?
And those, and like you say, I think maybe I was wrong. I think you were right. Those people did learn to use every decibel they could. They weren't afraid of making some sound,
right?
And of course, those things were not made acoustically. Hardwood floors and walls, and so there was a lot of glaring. But that's all we knew. We didn't know any different. And if you go back to that time period, like. I was born in 58, so probably in the 60s, early 60s, I could start remembering 4 or 5 years old. Now go back and think about what radio sounded like and the recordings. Like, go listen to an old Hank Williams recording now, and it's like, oh, man. But, you know, the people of that era, the greatest generation, grew up listening to radio.
Right.
And they didn't listen to radio. They watched radio.
Yeah.
They turned the radio on, and everybody sat there and stared at the radio and listened.
Right.
Molly and Fibber McGee and Molly and all these
Sure.
different programs. My folks always talked about it. They were born in 1914, so I was essentially raised by people that should have been my grandparents.
Uh-huh. I see. And then you mentioned two brothers who inspired you
Yes.
to buy a guitar and learn 3 chords and bother your wife endlessly with the one song. We might as well mention the two brothers.
That's John and Frank Timmons.
John and Frank Timmons.
Some of my goofy relations, as my dad said, we were shirt-tail relations a long ways around.
Okay, all right. And John Timmons was my ex-father.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's very versatile, plays a lot of different
He
instruments.
does play a
And
lot
they have
of
a musical family.
They do have a very musical family. And again, John, you are welcome on the show with your Gibson and your Vibrolux. I desperately want you on the show.
Yeah.
One more thing. I pretend to play the banjo so I can tell this joke. You know the difference? You'll like this. You know the difference between a banjo and a trampoline?
Yes, I do.
Do you know?
Yes, you take your shoes off to jump on the trampoline.
That's right.
Okay, I started my ADHD kicked in. I started to tell you a banjo story. And so I'd written this on Facebook, and I got quite a few replies. And one of them was a gentleman I know, and he said, "You probably don't know this, but I can play the banjo." But he said, "I believe what I can't remember if it was Will Rogers. I think it was Mark Twain said, a gentleman knows how to play the banjo, but doesn't." Now, my eldest son plays the banjo.
Oh,
5-string.
okay. All right.
And when he comes home, he brings it, and we sit and make music. And,
You know, I did not know that he played the banjo.
yeah, and he's gotten. He used to play the harmonicas, you know, had a
I
whole
knew that.
sleeve,
Yeah.
and was really good at it. And this is something he's picked up, and he's getting better at it. And he's very musical. Of course, he was trained when he was in the seminary on music, and
Yes.
but yeah, we have a lot of fun.
We better get on to this guitar, which your son Chance, the previous guest on the show, your son Chance insisted you bring this guitar.
Yes.
Thank you, Chance. You made the right choice. Tell us about this guitar here.
Well, when I had played my one and realized how poor of a ease of playing instrument I had, my wife made the mistake one time and said, "Well, maybe it's time you stepped up to a little better guitar."
I bet she never did that again.
Oh, she never did. Because it wasn't like the next day we drove to Rapid City and just happened to go to Schneider's where I had gotten my first guitar. And I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I would go into Schneider's and I would pick up these different guitars and fiddle around, and they would have them, you know, from the low end to the top end. And so I was talking to him and telling him I was kind of looking for another one to trade the old one in. And he kept pointing me at this Yari Alvarez. And it was a lot of money in those times. I think they wanted, I don't remember what they wanted for him. But the upshot of it was he would sell it to me with a case for $600 and keep my guitar. And that was a lot of money. I mean, that was like a month's wages for me at that time.
Sure.
And, oh, man, I wanted it, but I couldn't afford it. And he finally told me, he said, "Now, listen, this is not an expense. This is an investment." He said, "If you take care of this guitar, it'll never sound worse than it does today, and it will just continuously get better."
He was a good salesman, but we're glad
he was smart because he was right.
Yeah.
Because it sounds much better today because of the richness. Although what I noticed over the years was that it got quieter.
Oh, really?
And I always play with light or ultralight strings on those, so you don't quite get the sound as you would with a medium. But it's easier for me and my fingers. But yeah, I paid a lot of money for it, and I've never regretted it.
Yeah. And this was your Old Faithful for years and years and years.
Yeah, over 30 years I've had this.
Over
the only
30.
reason I traded up is in older age, my tendonitis kicks in, and this is a full-body dreadnought.
Right.
And if I try to play it for very long, my shoulder starts hurting.
Oh,
So I went to a smaller, more of a parlor-type guitar that's a little thinner and narrower.
Sure. What
I actually did is Chance's Old Faithful guitar. I always liked it, his
Taylor.
Yeah. And I went in a few years ago and I bought one just almost exactly like it, just newer.
Sure.
And I haven't regretted that either because it just plays. And then, Matt Trask, I have another one of these that you put us on to because you had found Alvarez Yari in a pawn shop a few years ago.
Oh, I forgot about this.
And you had mentioned to me that, you like those, you should check it out. So we went down there and Chance haggled with the gentleman and we got it bought. The only thing I don't like about it is the neck, for some reason, is a little thicker up here. And I went back and tried to find out as much as I could about it, and it was actually bought in 1971 in like Juneau or somewhere in Alaska.
Wow.
It would be great to see. Have you ever seen the movie The Red Violin?
I have not.
It traces this violin all through history.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would love to see where that guitar has been.
What a great story. Thank you. By the way,
thank you for finding it for
Matthew Trask, Guitars for People for Guitars.
How
about that?
How about that?
Yeah. So you have written some songs. Were many of them written on this particular album?
No, by the time I got into, actually, I'd always written poetry.
Right.
And when I finally did, well, I shouldn't say that. I might have. So many times when I write a song, I write the words first and then I find a tune for it.
Sure. Okay.
I can't at this moment think of any time that I had a tune first and then the words.
Okay.
It's always the words come first.
Okay.
And with an eye towards, will other people like it? I've written quite a few songs. Most of them no one will ever hear.
Okay,
because
sure.
they're really, most people probably wouldn't appreciate them.
Oh.
Chance and I have a running argument about one I call The Old Red Cow.
Okay.
And it's a real fast, upbeat, pretty simple thing that I was wanting, because most of what I do tends to be more sad and old cowboy stuff. And so I wanted something more upbeat, so I just came up with this little poem, and I could do that, and jazzed it up some, and he keeps telling me, no, it ain't good enough. It ain't good enough. I have played it for other professional musicians, said, yeah, do it, but I still respect Chance's opinion on a lot of things. My
favorite song of yours is the one where deep inside you say you're just a goth kid who wants to be left alone with a skateboard.
I can't remember that
song. Can you please turn this guitar around, because we have 30 years of wear on it. Let's show that to the audience.
I think this is what you're talking about.
Well, among other things, that is what I'm talking about.
A few accidents.
Absolutely.
This doesn't get played much anymore.
It doesn't.
But at one time, Chance said that I had to leave it to him in his will. And now Tate has an identical one to this that he got from a priest.
Oh, wow.
Father Peter, who's now passed away, gave it to Tate.
Oh, that's right.
So he's got the twin to this guitar. Same everything about it.
The same color?
Yeah.
That is a gorgeous color.
Yeah.
A very dark burst. I'm not sure. It might be called a sienna burst. It probably
you would know better than me.
A spruce top, I'm guessing.
I'm sure. Yes, we found out that that's what we like.
Is it rosewood back and sides? Do we know?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Have we done anything else to it?
I did go in and have them put the electronics in at one point.
All right.
And you get into all this stuff and you rattle off these numbers.
Right.
And I'm like, I wished I knew what they were talking about.
Well, we don't have to do that, but it's fun to show off when you can, as you know. Yeah. So, one more question. You have done quite a bit of recording. I think you have maybe 3 CDs.
No, I only got the one.
The one.
And it's out of print. I can't. Well, I could possibly, but there is no money in it.
Okay. Was this one of the guitars that you took to record?
Absolutely.
It definitely came along in the bunch.
Yep.
And you don't play it much.
Not now, just because of the.
Right.
I love the guitar, but it doesn't love me.
Well, the Dreadnought body shape was yet another evolution in the quest for more and more and more decibels. And yes, it's very deep.
Well, in the story of the Yaris, Yari was a man in Japan quite a few years ago who was trying to copy the D14.
Absolutely.
And he, at one point, I was told, had went and bought up all of the best tone wood in the world.
Wow.
And just put it away.
Right.
And they still were working on that. Mm-hmm. And that's why their guitars now, and there's, different levels. And you can still get Alvarez, you can still get Yaris. They're not really cheap. But of course, this would be the equivalent to, in my mind, to a Stradivarius that has sat around.
Right.
And it's picked up sound. You're not going to get the same sound from this as you would a brand new one, or vice versa.
Yes. But back to my point, the Dreadnought body shape was designed to get more volume out of an acoustic guitar. Now, with the advancement in amplification,
we don't need it.
We don't need that. So we can use, even in acoustic guitars, the acoustic amplification, if you will, is good enough that our acoustic guitar can be any body shape. Yes. And so many people, such as yourself, have got where they just don't want their elbow that far out, and so most of them have gone to a concert body shape.
I should just learn to play like Johnny Cash and appear, I guess.
There would be nothing wrong with that. No. Do we have anything else that we need to talk about, Mr. Robert?
I don't know. Is there anything else that we need to cover?
What is your social media contact information?
I am on Facebook, Robert Dennis. We have opened up our ranch and taking in guests now, Airbnb, and we've always had guests. And we finally just decided to go ahead and pursue it. It's like we finally decided God was trying to tell us something. And so we're stay at Dennis Ranch.
Okay.
To get in touch with me, if anybody needs to, my email, if that's what you're wanting, is my first initial last name, R. Dennis, Dennis, at gwtc.net.
And if you, as a guest of the Dennis Ranch, would like the experience of hearing Robert Dennis around the campfire, I'm sure that could be arranged.
Oh, yes, we do that a lot. We just had a young lady. She has her own web blog, whatever. She travels the world.
Okay.
And she contacted me and wanted to come and stay and then do a piece on our place. And very nice young lady. And she took fantastic pictures and had a great time. And she's really been promoting us. And we sat and played one night, just Chance and I. Now, we usually have guitars sitting out.
Right.
And Chance will come to my house for coffee or whatever, and he'll pick up a guitar and fiddle a little bit. And we'll sit there and jam a little bit and then go on about our day. And she was way impressed. She thought that was way cool. And when Chance's kids are home on the weekends, he'll do that a lot. Or when Gabe comes up, Tate's oldest boy, he grabs a guitar. And like last night, Gabe and Gus were playing together, and Paul wants them to come down to Hill City to their jam. And they've gotten very good, very accomplished.
Well, it's not every family, and if you're in one of those families, it's easy to take it for granted, but it's not every family that has an impromptu jam in the country 4 or 5 times a day.
And we should, I think, we should instill more of it. When I went to Chance's kids' Christmas concert down at Wall, I noticed a lot of those kids didn't seem to want to be there.
Right.
And I was told, well, no, music is required.
Right.
And although that's good, it kind of saddens me because if they really don't want to be there and their heart's not in it, I don't know that you can pound musical appreciation into someone's head.
Well, 2 things about that point, if I may. Number one, that's kind of a American tradition, is children being forced to participate in some sort of music against their will. And you need that grumpy kid in the back of the Christmas concert. You do. It's really not Christmas if you don't have
it. The Grinch.
Right, exactly. The kid mouthing the words unenthusiastically makes my day. And 2, I would suspect that most teachers would argue, if you make it elective, eventually all of your precious music money is going to disappear.
There is that.
Right.
There is that.
So, if I may get that hoity-toity here on my show.
Well, you may, I bet. It's your show.
Okay.
You can kind of do whatever you want,
Well, thank you, sir. I'll try and keep it, family friendly.
Speaking of, are you going to be running for any political office in the near future?
I decided to give that up about 8 years ago.
You don't want to take a run at the presidency or anything?
I don't want to take a run at anything. No.
Okay.
No.
Well,
I want to run to Black Hills Blend Espresso. That's what I want to do.
There you go.
How was that for a plug, huh?
That's good.
Remember my sponsorship with Trask Hay, LLC, large, round, and square bales, 515-0858. Oh, sure. Ian Tyson says, change your strings. Robert Dennis, are you ready?
Okay, so you said play whatever I want, and it'd kind of be nice to play something I wrote, I guess. And this is a song I wrote, and I call it Blood Ties. Hope I can do it justice this morning. My great-grandfather built stone and sweat and skill. Grandpa mostly worked the land. Dad welded for the war, talking tools of destruction, then returned to the family brand. My mother lost her dad when she was barely 7. All her family still survives.
older brothers moved back home, taking care of Kim. She was just 15 when the 30s arrived. Blood, sweat, and tears have washed this land for many years. My family staked out their claim. Lived, loved, and fought and died. Know how hard they tried. Treasured their family's good name. Now life back then was tough. Pain, hardship, and suffering. There weren't no strangers to hard times. Cash was hard to come by. Learn to make do and learn lessons. Help them survive. So we get to reap what they have sown for us. We must also do the same. Appreciate and be content what you have. Take some pride in your family's name. Blood, sweat, and tears wash this land for many years. My family staked out their claim. Lived, loved, and fought and died. Know how hard they tried. Treasured their family's good name. You better take some pride in your family.